Hi everybody, my name is Derek Woodruff AIFD. I'm here on behalf of the American Institute of Floral Designers. I'm from Traverse City, Michigan. If you don't know where that is, it's right here. So I'm in the Great White North. I've been a floral designer for about 16 years, and about the last 10 years or so I've been really interested in terrariums. I think that came from working in a store. We had set up a terrarium bar where customers could come in and build their own terrariums. Now what was really cool about this was that it was engaging with them. They really wanted to get hands-on. It was an approachable project that they could complete with success, and it gave me an opportunity as a designer to educate and inspire the consumer to create this project. I got to relay some of my education from being a floral designer, especially a floral designer in AIFD, and kind of give some of that context as they were composing their design. It was really, really cool. Today, we're going to discuss the 3 different major types of terrariums. We're going to discuss how to build terrariums for success, long-term success, very important. And then we'll also touch on some trends in terrarium design. And that'll all tie into floral design and specifically the principles and elements from the American Institute of Floral Designers. But before we get started, there are some key supporters of this program that I really need to thank. All of the amazing air plants or tillandsia that I'll be using today are provided by Russell's Bromeliads. To learn more about Russell's Bromeliads, visit their website at russellsairplants.com. All of the miniature succulents, cacti, and ferns were graciously provided by Central Florida Ferns. To find out more information about Central Florida Ferns, visit their website at cfferns.com. All of the containers, media, decorative accents, and tools were provided by Syndicate Home and Garden. To find out more about Syndicate Home and Garden, visit their website at syndicatehomeandgarden.com or by visiting 46spruce.com. And lastly, my education would not be possible without partners like the American Institute of Floral Designers. They're a really important organization for florists and for people in the plant industry. They have a great symposium every year, so check them out at aifd.org. I mentioned 3 different main types of terrariums, and we're going to start with the smallest. Now that would be the hanging terrarium. Now just because it's the smallest doesn't mean it's the easiest. Plants that do well in hanging terrariums are succulents, terrarium ferns and tropicals, tillandsia plants. So really, almost any type of plant can thrive in a hanging terrarium, as long as it fits the scale. Now, one thing you do want to consider when planting in such a small environment is that you're using plants that go well together. So like with like. So what I have here are a couple of succulents, and we'll accent it with a tillandsia. So the first thing that we have to do is build a little bit of a drainage layer. And what that does is when you add water to the soil, it gives the water somewhere to shed away to. And that's important because in a container like this, there's no hole for excess water to drain away, and sometimes consumers have a heavy hand. Now, what works best as a drainage layer is some kind of coarse material. So that could be sand, stone, crushed seashells, marbles, anything that's inorganic in nature so it doesn't mold under the soil level. What I have here is some decorative sand. So you only need about 1 inch or so of drainage in the bottom. And what I'm going to do is plant this at kind of a graded level. So not straight across, but almost like just on an angle, just like that. Next, we'll add our soil. So Bella Moss is from Syndicate Home and Garden, and it's just a very generic potting soil, works really well in terrarium systems. If you wanted something that was more appropriate for succulents or specifically for succulents, you can buy succulent soil, but this will work really well as long as we're providing the correct amount of care. I'm gonna go ahead and pour this half a bag in here. And then using my terrarium tools, I can clean up the edge of the glass as I'm working. I can move the soil about. I'm going to try not to disturb the soil as much as possible because I don't want to ruin the pretty drainage layer that I created in the bottom. I want to keep that nice and clean. Now, if I need to clean my brush, I can just tap it on the table. So next we can add our plants. Now the best way to do this is to plant the succulents first and then add the tillandsia last. Since the tillandsia will take separate care, either removed from the system entirely or misted in the container, it can be set in last and easily accessible. So we'll want to start with our tallest plant, or the plant that'll go to the back of the terrarium, whichever plant that may be. So I think I'll start with this little guy here. Now I'm going to gently remove him from his pot, and if he makes a little mess, that's okay. And we'll set him on the counter here, take our spade, and dig a little hole for him back here. Now I only have to dig a hole that's about the size of the root ball, so just a little hole. And then we'll pop him right in there. And then using my rake tool, I can move some soil up around the plant and tamp it down. And I want to do this from all sides. Now he's a little top heavy because he has really thick tissues. So we want to make sure that that soil is nice and tamped around him, so he doesn't move too much before he takes root in his environment. Awesome. Now we're ready for our second plant. Something I'm thinking about here, and this is kind of a rule of floral design too, is I'm planting in threes or odd numbers. Odd numbers do really well in design, and I'm kind of planting these in a little triangle because I have 3 different plants. Now, you can break up the soil away from the root mass a little bit if you want to do that, or you can just put the entire plug in there as it is. I tend to do it that way and then just let the plants take root when they're ready. Moving the soil up around the plant and tamping it down. That tamping process is really important because it tamps all of the air out of the soil. Excellent. Now, if your little guy back here gives you a little bit of trouble, you can kind of prop him up, move some more soil up against him, just like that. Now, next would be the tillandsia. Now in this situation, because he's going to sit on top of the system, we want to make sure we add the decoration first and that the air plant goes in on top of the decoration. So I've chosen some Bella Moss Sangria color, and I thought this would play really well with the pink and the purple undertones in the edge of the succulents, and then also in the tillandsia. So I can break this apart into smaller pieces. My tongs are really great for this, to get into these tighter spaces. Put this up against the edge of the glass. I always tell consumers to put their decorations against the edge of the glass because that's where they'll be seen. Or you can use them at the base of the plant. And that can be for 2 reasons. That can be for structural support, or just to give it a little finishing touch at the base. Now, color harmonies are very important in the American Institute of Floral Design. It's something that we think about with every floral design that we make. And the color harmony here is showcasing the vibrancy, the green of the plants with the pink little accent colors that are in here. So I'm building on that color harmony by using that moss in the way that I have. Next, we can take this little tillandsia guy, tuck him right in here. And there we go. Now I don't have to completely cover the soil if I don't want to. As the designer, I'm allowed to make that choice. I like that it's a little bit earthy and the soil shows through. If I wanted to, I could add some of the sand to the top. I also do love the idea of bringing what's on the bottom up to the top layer. And that is how you plant a hanging terrarium. To care for this, I'm going to add a little bit of water to this when the soil dries out, and the tillandsia I can either take out and immerse underwater, or I can use a plant mister and keep him humid from time to time. The next popular terrarium type we're going to talk about is an open terrarium. Now this is a system that doesn't have a lid or any kind of enclosure that traps humidity. So it has open air flow. So this is often called an arid terrarium for that reason. Plant types that work best in arid terrariums are cacti and succulents, tillandsia, and even tropicals and ferns. If you put tropicals and ferns in an open terrarium type, you'll just have to give them a little bit more attention in way of humidity and water. So I've chosen some small succulents, a little cacti, and some tillandsia to decorate this beautiful artisan terrarium from Syndicate Home and Garden. Now, just like the last terrarium, we need a drainage layer in here, and what I'm going to use for that is a bag of drainage stone from Bella Moss. Now again, with this terrarium, you only need about 1 inch of drainage. So we're going to gently add this bag in here. There we go. Now, like my last terrarium, I can either grade this or keep this a nice, clean, even line. Now, what I like about this terrarium in particular is the curvature of the sides. So anything that you put against the glass really shows when this is on a table or in a public space. Next layer is our soil mix. This one takes quite a bit more soil, you can imagine. So I'm going to use 2 bags of the soil mix. Spread this around a little bit. I do like to use my brush to clean up the edge of the glass in between each step, just because it keeps the terrarium nice and clean as I'm working on it. Now, because we've got some succulents and some cacti, I'm going to plant the cacti after the succulents because I don't want to work around this spiny guy to get underneath him. So we'll save him for almost last. Take my spade shovel. I'm gonna plant this guy first because he's the shortest. If I plant the taller ones in first, then I have to work around them, and I want this to come together really easily. So he came nice and clean out of his pot. Press him firmly into the soil. Next, I'll take my rake tool. Bring the soil up around the plant and tamp it down. On all sides, very important. All right, next, this cute little guy. Take my shovel, dig a little hole for him. I'm kind of keeping these guys in the center or towards the center, but also so that they can really be seen and I'm not burying my plants on top of each other. To get into some tighter spaces in between these plants, I can use my brush to scoot some soil in there and then tamp down without harming the plant tissues. just like that. Next is going to be my barrel cactus. And because I have these taller tillandsias that are going to go in here, those I want in the middle. So we're going to put this cactus towards the edge. Now, because he's spiny, I've got these great tongs that can help me get this cacti into place. There we go. There we go. There. Cool. Next, we'll add our decoration. So I'm going to start with the finer decoration first so that it doesn't get on top of my moss. My moss is a little bit lighter, clumpier, so I'll put that on top of the sand. To get this in here, I can just use my hand and just do small little handfuls so I can really control where this goes. And what I'm doing right now is a design technique. In floral design, it's called line. And line is what draws your eye through the composition. So I'm using this lighter colored sand on top of this darker colored soil. And I'm creating a dynamic line that is almost a pathway for our eye to walk through this garden. It's going to pull our eye from the front to the back of the design. And this is very intentional. Now maybe I want a little bit more sand up against the edge of the glass so we create a nice little clean layer. Perfect. Another technique that I mentioned with the last terrarium is sometimes bringing up to the top what's on the bottom. So we use some hydrostone or some drainage stone on the bottom. We can add this on top. I can almost use it just as a little edge to my line in this terrarium. Or I can use it to base my plant material. I'd also like to add a pop of color. So to play off of the orange in the spines of the cactus, I can use an autumn bella moss. This I'll break up into smaller pieces and use my tongs to put this into place. To finish off my design, I can add my tillandsia to my landscape. Now my idea was to just use these and make it look like one plant. There we go. We can see through that. Our eye is carried through the design. To care for my tillandsia, I can either take them out and immerse them, or I can mist them with my plant mister. For my succulents, I'm going to add a little bit of water to the soil when it dries out, and the cacti can remain dry for some time. The final of the three most popular terrarium types is a closed terrarium. Now this is a humid system, often called a humid terrarium, and it's because it's in some kind of enclosed environment. That means the terrarium has a lid, or it's a cloche like what we have here. Now, even though this is a closed system, it does have a couple of air holes here. Now, this is still considered a closed system because that doesn't allow for open airflow. The same rules apply for building this terrarium. We want a layer of drainage. In a shallow system like this, because the reservoir is so short, we don't have to have a huge drainage layer. Plants that do well in humid systems are ferns and tropical plants. I've chosen a few different ferns here, and I am going to accent with some tillandsia as well, and I'll tell you how to take care of those separately. I'm just using some drainage stone here, and I'm going to move it out to the edge of the glass. Mostly because that's where you'll be able to see it the best. We'll keep our soil mix in the middle. And again, we're going to start with our smaller plants first. Take this little fern, plant him towards the edge of the container. This type of container is really easy to plant in because you can get your hands in there. Next, this little fern. And then the big guy goes in last. Now for this guy to fit appropriately, we want to free his roots just a little bit so he can sprawl. I can take some of the soil that we took off of the roots and I can use that to help firm the soil surface in the terrarium. Tamp that down really good. In those harder to reach areas, I can use my brush. Now let's talk about some rules with closed terrarium systems. Essentially, if I wanted to decorate the soil surface, I could use some of the drainage stone. And this is really important to know this. Anytime you put a dried or preserved material into a closed system and you don't plan to take the lid off, if ever, things that are dried or preserved can mold. They tend to mold. And that's just because it's a dried material and there's a lot of humidity in there. So to prevent mold in your terrarium systems, you can either not use dried materials, or you can take the lid off from time to time to give your terrarium proper airflow. In this case, I'm going to use some forest moss. Nice dark green rich color here. Really plays off with the plants. Again, I'm either using this at the edge of the container or to base the plants with. The color is just really nice. This really looks like a little forest walkway in here. Now I also have some clover green reindeer moss. This is also a preserved item. So another reason why we would want to take that lid off to provide some proper airflow. I'm really just beefing up this green color in here, and I just really like that. In floral design world, when something is all one color, we call it monochromatic. There we go. And let's talk trends for just a minute here. Now, if I wanted to add a trend element to this terrarium, what's trending right now? Dried flowers. So I have a couple different types of dried flowers here. And I'm going to add them to this terrarium just to add a little whimsical to it. Now these can't be too tall because we do have a ceiling. But these dried flowers can go right down into the soil and be held in place. This is fennel. We can do the same thing with these little white flowers. I'm keeping them in clusters, just like they would grow in nature. Now, because these are dried flowers, we want to make sure that we take that lid off from time to time to provide open airflow and keep them from molding. Lastly, we'll add our air plants. Now, tillandsias prefer open airflow, even though they do like the humidity, so they're going to be very happy in here. If this were a system where we were not going to take the lid off, the air plants could actually rot because there's not open airflow, even though they do like that humidity. So these are a great fit for this design because of the dried elements that are in it. To finish, we just add our cloche. Make sure all of our plant parts are inside of the glass. Bam. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this program today. Thank you so much for the sponsorship of Syndicate Home and Garden, Russell's Bromeliads, and Central Florida Ferns, as well as the American Institute of Floral Designers for having me do this program for you. Visit their websites, check them out, and thank them for everything that they do. I hope you've learned something here today. If you have further questions, you can find me on social media, Facebook, Derek Woodruff, or Instagram at Floral Underground, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much. Have a great day.